Good afternoon. Nobody in YouTube and yes, nobody in Zoom also. Okay, so today we'll be continuing with the chapter called ecology. In the unit ecology, we'll be continuing with the chapter organisms and population. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So in this chapter, especially in today's class, what we are going to discuss? We will be discussing about a population attributes, growth modules, and population interactions. These are the 4 topics which we are going to discuss in today's class. Okay. So before going to the today's class, just answer me, which of the following areas do population ecology links? Which of the following areas do population ecology links? Option A, ecology, population genetics and evolution. Option B, ecology, population genetics and mathematics. Option C, biology, physics and history. Option D, ecology, physics and history. So the question is, which of the following areas do a population ecology links? Yes, anyhow, no student are there in the Zoom and YouTube, so I'm answering myself. That's ecology, population and genetics. Sorry, population genetics and evolution. These 3 areas where the ecology links to it. Okay. So we are studying about a population in today's class. What do you mean by population and how it relates to the things? So population is the total number of inbreeding individuals of a species found in a geographical area who share and compete for a similar resources in a particular area, in a particular geographical area. The total number of individuals or the organisms which can interbreed, which can give to the next generation, and they are presenting in a one geographical area where they will be sharing and competing for a similar resources. These kind of organisms together we are calling as a population. And an individual may have a birth and death, but a population has birth rate and death rate. Okay, if we consider any individual, there we are going to say, okay, the individual has been born or the individual has been died. But whenever it comes to a population, we will be saying about there is a birth rate, which means if there are 100 people, next year, what is the birth rate? How much the population has been increased. And the same way, similar way, we have a death rate also. In a population, these rates refer to per capita births and deaths respectively. And population density. Population density, the other name for the population density is a population size. So how do we calculate this population size? That is by, let's say, if we have in a particular area 10 number of organisms. To these 10 number of organisms, out of these 10 number of organisms, 2 organisms are moving to the other place and 4 organisms which are coming from the somewhere, from a place A, let's say place A. So now if we calculate the population size, earlier the population size is 10, but now where the 2 organisms have been eliminated, they went to the other place, and 4 organisms which have been joined, and which means they came from the other place. So total now we have a population density as 12. This is what called a population density or population size. And the population density is determined by the 4 basic processes. Natality. Natality means a birth rate. Mortality. Mortality, which is a death rate. Immigration, which is eliminating the population. Next, the percentage ratio of natality over a mortality is known as a vital index. So vital index, how do we calculate? How many organisms have been died divided by how many organisms have been born divided by how many organisms have been died into 100, where we will be getting a vital index. So this formula, it is important. The vital index formula is Natality divided by mortality into 100. This is what called as vital index. So there are some characters which will be adapting only to the population. We cannot choose those characters in a single organism. So what are those characters? And what do we call those characters as? Those characters we are going to call as a population attributes, which means these population attributes only to population, not to individual. We are taking a particular time. In that particular time, how many organisms have been died and what is the rate of it? How many organisms have been born and what is the rate of it? This is what called a birth rate. So it refers to per capita births. Remember it. Let me change the color. Let's take an example. In a pond, there are 20 lotus plants. Last year, there were 20 lotus ponds, and through reproduction 8 new plants are added. Through reproduction this year, what happened? 8 new plants have been added to this pond. Now what is the birth rate? How do we calculate the birth rate? That is by, what we need to do is that we need to write how many organisms have been born. So let's say 8 organisms have been born. 8 lotus plants have been born in the pond. Initially there were 20. So 8 divided by 20. Now the answer is 0.4. The birth rate is what? 0.4%. The birth rate has been increased. Is it clear? Okay, the same way we have a death rate too. Death rate also we are considering per capita. Yes, the same way we are going to calculate. This year, if we have 100 of organisms, next year, how many organisms have been died from it, from the entire population? Just a minute. Okay, so the death rate also will be considering or calculating the same way. How many organisms have been died and what was the initial number of the organisms? The same way, let's say there are total 40 individuals in a population. We have a 40 individuals like a fruit fly. 40 fruit flies are there. Out of 44 individuals have been died. Okay. In a week, in a particular week. So now, if we are calculating the death rate of this fruit fly, what we need to do? 4 divided by 40. Now, what is the death rate? Death rate is a 0.1 individual per fruit fly per week. I hope it is clear. So now here comes a question. Which of the following attribute does a population have? Which of the following attribute does a population have? Attribute means a character. So which of the following characters is suitable for the population, not for the individual? Option A, birth. Option B, birth rate. Option C, death. Option D, pyramids. Here the correct option is birth rate. Just now we have studied. So one more population attribute is, so far we have studied 2 population attributes, birth rate, death rate. Now we are studying one more population attribute, that is called as a sex ratio. Sex ratio means in a population, how many male individuals are there and how many female individuals are there. This is what considered as a sex ratio. Example, if we take in the humans, there are 60% of a females and 40% of a males in a population. We can consider it, okay, if in your class, out of, let's say there are totally 100 students, or there are 50 students. Out of 50 students, there are totally 50 students. Out of 50 students, what happened here is that 25 are the females and 25 are the males. Now, what is the sex ratio? 50% males and 50% females. This is how we are going to calculate the sex ratio. Next is a population size, or also called as a population density. Just now I have told you what do you mean by population size or population density. It is the number of individuals of a species per a unit area or a volume. This is what called a population size. So in a particular area or in a particular volume, what we are giving, if we are growing any organism in a laboratory conditions, then we'll be considering as volume. Or if we are seeing the population size in a larger area, then we'll be seeing a unit area. In this particular unit area, how many number of individuals are there? This is a one way of calculating a population size, number of individuals. Okay, example, if we see the population density of a Siberian cranes at a Bharatpur wetland in any year is less than 10. Population size, where we are seeing the number of these Siberian cranes, of these birds. It is a millions for a Chlamydomonas in a pond. If you see, the pond is having a n number of algae. But whenever it comes to birds number is less. If we are seeing the population size or a population density in a way of a number, then Siberian cranes are having a less population density and Chlamydomonas having a more population density. The same way, the population size or this density can also measure percent of covering or biomass. Let's take one more example. One is that number we have studied, right? What is the number of organisms which are present in the particular area? Now, one more way of calculating population size or population density is the biomass. Biomass, okay, if we have one area, in that we have a banyan tree and the small Parthenium plants also. We have a 200, let's say 200 Parthenium plants, which are very small, and a huge banyan tree. If we consider which is having a larger biomass, yes, of course, the banyan tree is having a larger biomass. So here the population density, which is having a more population size or which is having a more population density, is banyan tree. When we are talking in the form of biomass, the population size can be explained in a two ways. One is in the way of a number and one more is in the way of a biomass. Okay, here comes the next question. What does the population density mean? What do you mean by population density? That is the number of animals and plants present in a given area. The number of individuals in a unit area in a unit time, the concentration of a human population, the number of animals and plants present in a given area. Of course, the C, option A and option B have been repeated. Okay. So now if we see, population density is option B, the number of individuals in a unit area in a unit time. Next is age distribution. How we can distribute the age? We can distribute the age into three ways or three stages. One is that, let's take a medium one or the middle one, that is a reproductive age. The organisms, or if we take a humans from 20 to 50 years, let's take, or 20 to 40 years around, humans have a capacity of reproduction. So this age is called as the age of reproductive stage. This age is called as what? Reproductive stage. Next, before the 20 years, what the humans are there, those are called a pre-reproductive age, where the organism is not yet mature enough for the reproduction. Though that organism, I mean, at that stage is called as a pre-reproductive stage. After reproduction, where the organism cannot reproduce anymore, this is called as post-reproductive age. Clear? So based on this, we have, if you can observe the graphs here, or if you can observe the pyramids here, if in any country, the pre-reproductive organism number is more compared to the reproductive and post-reproductive, then it means that the population will get increased drastically in the coming generations, which means obviously the post-reproductive age people will die. These reproductive aged people will be coming to the post-reproductive stage. Now these pre-reproductive aged people will get, will attain a capacity of reproduction, and the organisms in the next generation will get increased. So here there are high chances of increasing the population. And one more is the next way. If pre-reproductive and reproductive if pre-reproductive and reproductive ages, age group of people, both are same way, both are having the same population, and post-reproductive age group people will die, let's say their number is very less, then you can observe in the next generation this population will be stable. Jenbi Changlang. Hi. You're too late. Okay, so the one more pyramid, the third pyramid, what we are seeing here is that declining pyramid, which means if the pre-reproductive aged group, okay. So here what we discussed from the beginning, I'll just give you an overview. You can just see. Yes, we have studied about a population. What is a population? I'll share you this notes with you. Okay, and population density, and moreover, this is important, population attributes. What do you mean by population attributes? The characters which will be applicable only to population, not to the individuals. Let's say birth rate. Can we talk about a birth rate to a particular organism? Particular organism means, yes, the organism has been born or organism have been died, birth or death. But birth rate, this will be, we are talking only in the population. Even the death rate also we will be talking only in a population, not for the individuals. And sex ratio, how many, if we take a particular area in a particular time, how many males, in our individual species, how many males are there, how many females, how many male organisms are there, how many female organisms are there. This is what called as a sex ratio. And population size or population density we have studied. Now we are studying about an age distribution. What is this age distribution? So before going to the age distribution, in an entire life cycle, let's take a life cycle of a human itself, we have 3 stages. That is, before reproduction. Before reproduction means before the age of 18, before the age of 20. What the humans are there where they cannot reproduce, right? So this age is called as a pre-reproductive age. This age is called as pre-reproductive age. And when the human attains the age of reproduction, this age is called as a reproductive age. And after some years, maybe after 50 years, the human cannot reproduce. That is called as a post-reproductive age. This is about a human. Exactly the same way we can see the pre-reproductive, reproductive, and post-reproductive stages in almost all the organisms. So based on that, we have some pyramids. The first pyramid, what here is that expanding pyramid. Expanding pyramid means the population will increase. Let's say in the first pyramid, we have more number of pre-reproductive aged people, which means the children are more, and the people who are young, they are quite less than the children's, number, and the old people are even less. If you see the next generation, obviously all these post-reproductive aged group people will die. So now what is going to happen? These young people will become old, which means they will be attaining a post-reproductive stage. And then comes these children's, the pre-reproductive age group people, they attain a maturity for the reproduction. So now they start to reproduce. Now you can see after this, the number of reproductive phase will get increased, right? The people who are present in the reproductive phase, has been increased. If you can see now, all these organisms starts to reproduce and the population will increase now. This is what called as an expanding population or expanding age pyramid. Next is a stable. Stable where reproductive aged people and pre-reproductive aged people quite common. So that the next generation will be also the same kind of people. The same number of people will be getting, not more or not less. This is called a stable. And next is declining. So in this declining pyramid, what we are going to study is that the pre-reproductive aged people are less here, which means if those people attain a maturity for the reproduction in the next generation, for now itself, the pre-reproductive age group people are very less, number is very less. If they start to reproduce, and the next generation will be even less. So here what is going to happen? The population will get decreased. Let me write here, the population increase. Here the population will be stable. Here the population will get decrease. Is it clear? Please reply in the chat box. Okay, let's move further. So here we have one graph. What is that graph? Convex curve, diagonal curve, concave curve. So in these three, this is what, okay, here, yes, thank you. Okay, just a minute. So first one is a convex curve. What it is indicating? Let's say the example, let's take the example of a human. Here, the humans, they are going to born and up to their lifespan, they will be living up to the end of their lifespan and they will die. So which means what? Here, the age relative units will be same, but suddenly they will be decreasing when the human is dying. This is what called as a convex curve, where you can observe when organisms have completed their potential lifespan and died. Completely, they will be living in their potential lifespan and then they'll die in an old age. This is where we are going to get, they will be living in their lifespan and they will die. This is what called as a convex curve. Diagonal curve means where in a population, let's say the small, here we have an example of a birds, right? So birds, all the organisms, in the birds, if we take the eggs and the chicks and the bird, right? This is what the development. So here what happens, if the eggs are also dying, chicks are also dying, and the bird is also dying. If we have 100 birds and some chicks and some eggs, let's say the egg is also getting spoiled, the chick is also dying, and the bird is also dying, which means what? All the organisms in that, all age organisms in that population are getting died. So where we'll be getting a diagonal curve. And concave curve, this kind of curve is mostly found in such organisms who die before their potential lifespan. So if, for example, the organism has to live up to 10 years, but it is dying in 1 year itself. then with there we are going to get a concave curve. I hope it is clear. So now let us see the growth modules. What do you mean by growth modules? So we have two types of growth here. One is a exponential growth and one more is a logistic growth. You have to remember exponential growth, mostly it is going to take place in a artificial condition. It is going to happen in artificial condition. What do you mean by artificial condition? Let's say in a laboratory we have organisms. I mean, in the laboratory we are growing any bacteria. What do we do there? If we want a more number of bacteria, we will be giving a more amount of food continuously. It is not a natural habitat. We are providing it a food continuously, which means this is an artificial habitat, right? So in the artificial habitat, what is going to happen? Let me take a slide. So in the artificial habitat, now let's see. This is okay. So now what is going to happen? The population starts to grow initially very slow. Why? Because yes, it has to adjust to that environment, right? Okay, it will grow. I mean, let's say bacteria in the laboratory condition. Initially, they'll grow very slowly, and suddenly they start to increase. If we are giving a more food to it, it start to grow more, right? So but this is not happening in the natural condition. Why? Because in the natural condition, one or the other resources will get empty. We cannot get all the resources unlimitedly. All the resources are limited here. So this is going to happen only in the artificial condition, and this is called as exponential growth. Exponential growth. And if you can observe the curve is a kind of a J shape, right? The curve is kind of J shape. So this can be called as J-shaped curve. Now, how to calculate this? If we have some time, in that time, how many organisms have been increased? How to calculate this in the exponential growth? That is by dn by dt is equals to b minus d into n. What do you mean by dn dt? Which are present in a particular time. Let's say, just a minute. Yep, sorry. So let's say now in a particular time, which means in a 10 minutes or in a 1 day, how many bacteria have been grown, which means that how we are going to write dn by dt. We need to calculate. So, okay, yesterday there were hundreds of bacteria. Now today, how many bacteria have been grown? That we need to see, right, in artificial medium. So how to see what is the rate of growing, whether it has been increased or decreased? That how to calculate is that b minus d. B is the birth rate, how many organisms have been died, and D is the death rate. I told you how to calculate the birth rate and death rate. So B is a birth rate, D is a death rate. We have to multiply this with the number of organisms present now. Okay, so now how many organisms are present? Multiplied with the how many organisms born minus how many organisms have been died. Then we will be getting the number of organisms in a particular time. In a particular time, whether the number of organisms has been increased or decreased. This B minus D can be written as a R. Yes, they have given some examples for this, all this. So if we want to write the same expression in a mathematical way, how to write? NT is equals to N naught E power RT. NT here is a population density after a time. So if we have given a time like a 1 day, 2 days. So after the time, what is a population density? That is what we need to calculate. Population density means the size of a population. Size or number of organisms, how they have increased or not, that we need to see. How to see? Which is equals to N naught E power RT. N naught means population density at a time 0, which means initially how many organisms we were having. Here the N is equals to N naught, both are same. R is intrinsic rate of natural increase, or we can write as B minus D. Birth rate minus death rate can be written as an intrinsic rate. And the last one is the E, where we'll be taking a log value, that is a 2.71828. This is how we can get the exponential growth mathematical value also. Both the formulas, whichever we can use. Next is a logistic growth. Logistic growth usually happens in a natural conditions where the resources are where the resources are having an end, which means if we are using the resources very continuously, the resources will get over. So that is why, that is when we will be getting our logistic growth. Now let me tell you how to write it. Okay, so initially the organisms the population in a particular area with a particular food, everything, they start to grow slowly, and then they attain a maturity and they are increased. They're increasing according to this. After some time, so here is, okay, this is where all the resources will get empty. This is where all the resources will get empty. This is called as, carrying capacity. What do you call this as? Carrying capacity. So now what the organisms will do? They will grow, but after some time, the resources are getting empty. So what the population is going to do? The population will come to a stable. Now the population is not going to increase anymore. So this is what called as a logistic growth. Logistic growth, where it is going to, it will be occurring naturally. And this is, what is the shape of the curve? This is a S-shaped curve, or it can be also called as a sigmoid curve. Sigmoid curve. Clear? You can see the, in this graph, you can see both the pink line which has been drawn is a exponential growth, and whereas the blue color line is a logistic growth. And the formula for this logistic growth is given here, dn by dt, which means a density at a particular time. How to calculate? R into N. R, what do you mean by R? R is equals to birth rate minus death rate. N, how many organisms were present initially at a starting time? We are calculating, let's say we have 100 humans now. After 1 year, how many humans, what is the size, what is the number of human population? How to calculate? That is what called dn by dt. And how to, then R into N. R means what? How many humans have been born minus how many humans have been died. That's a R. That's birth rate, actually we need to write. And then N. What do you mean by N? Initially, how many humans were there? Let's say 100 humans were there. Okay. And into K minus N by K. K is the carrying capacity, which is a constant. This is what the formula for logistic growth. I hope it is clear. If you have a doubt, so please ask in the chat box. Now, let's say the population interactions. So how the one population is going to interact with the other population if two different populations are staying together, because we can see on the earth or in the environment, we have to deal with the n number of populations in our daily life. So how the populations, each and every population are going to interact? There are some interspecific interactions as given in the below, like a 6 are there: mutualism, competition, predation, parasitism, commensalism, and amensalism. One by one we can see. So in all the population interactions where the two kinds of populations have been involved, let's take one example of predation, because everyone see the Discovery Channel, right? In the Discovery Channel, what usually happens is that the tiger will hunt the deer. Tiger will hunt the deer. There, what is happening? If the tiger is hunting the deer, two populations, I mean, two different organisms have been involved, tiger and a deer. So in this tiger and deer, tiger is depending on the deer, or tiger is predating on the deer, where it is using it as a food, which means tiger is getting a benefit here. Tiger is getting a food, but whereas a deer, which is losing its life. So one species is getting benefit and one species is getting harmful. I mean, one species is a harm. This is called as a predation. So now the organism which is getting a benefit, like a tiger, that is called a predator, and organism which is getting a harm, that is called as a prey. Predator and prey. This is what this process or this interaction is called as a predation. Okay, here they have given no lion predatory on deer. Example, the 6th one, you can see the example, lion which is going to predate on the deer. So just to let you know how the organisms are going to interact, I started with the predation. Next, let's see the amensalism. Here the symbols you need to know. Plus symbol means the organism is getting benefited. Minus symbol, the organism is getting a harm. 0, the organism is not affecting anything, either neither benefit nor harm. So amensalism, where the one species is getting harm, the other species is neither benefit nor harm. The example is cat and a rat. Okay. So here what is going to happen? The most powerful animal or the large organism inhibits the growth of other lower organisms. Okay, so let's take the examples of plants. You might have observed, right? So in a particular area or in an aquarium, okay, let's see in the aquarium. In the aquarium, only particular kinds of fishes we can grow. If we have any fish where that excretion is going to affect the other fish, you see, we have a large fish and it is going to excrete, and that excretion is harmful to the other fish. Now what is going to happen? All the other small fishes, by taking the excretion of this fish, they will die, which means the one species is getting a harm. The larger fish, it is neither getting a harm nor a benefit. So this is called as a amensalism. Mutualism, both organisms will get benefit, like lichens. So lichen is the best example, where it is an interaction between a fungi and algae. So here what is going to happen? Fungi, it is going to take a food from an algae. Algae, which is going to take a shelter and a water from the fungi, where both are mutually understandable and both are getting a benefit to each other. So here both the species are getting a benefit. This is what called as a mutualism. And next is commensalism. Commensalism, where one organism is getting benefit and one more neither benefit nor harm. Okay, the example which we can take is a suckerfish on a shark. So suckerfish, which usually present on the shark. Shark is a very big fish. On this shark, the suckerfish will go and stay. Now, the suckerfish is taking shelter from the shark, but shark is not affecting anything. Shark food is as usual. Shark can lead its life normally. So here, suckerfish is getting a benefit in the sense shelter, whereas a shark is neither benefited nor harmed. Okay. So next is a competition. If the two species are competing for the same resources, then what is going to happen? If the mutualism is there, both will get benefit. But if the competition is there, then both will get a harm. Like there are some birds which are going to compete for the nuts of the squirrels. Okay, I mean the birds are going to compete with the squirrels for a nuts and a seeds. Here what is going to happen is that neither squirrel nor birds will get the nuts. This is what called a competition. And the last one is a parasitism. Parasitism where there is a one organism going to depend on another organism. So the first organism which is depending on the other called as a parasite. And the other organism which is giving the shelter or which is allowing the other organism to live on it, that is called a host. So now the parasite is going to take a food and a shelter from the host. So parasite is getting benefited, but the host is losing its food, right? So this is what called, I mean, which means the host is harmed. This is called as a parasitism. Here you can see some examples. First one is a predation. Most of the carnivores are the predators, and insectivorous plants also, where the plant is a predator, insect is a prey. And competition either for any natural resources or for the food or for the shelter, whatever. Right. So here one scientist called, his name is a Gauss. Gauss has explained as the competitive exclusion principle. What he explained, it states that two closely related species competing for the same resources cannot coexist, which means if there are two organisms, I mean, you can see the yellow colored birds and the red colored birds. Those two are competing for the same resource. So here what is going to happen? They both cannot stay. Either the yellow birds has to stay or the red birds has to stay, because they both want the same kind of food. They cannot coexist indefinitely, and the competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually. So which is a dominant, that is going to stay, which is a recessive or inferior, that will eliminate from the space. Okay, this may be a true in a limited resources, but not otherwise. If the resource is very limited, then the competition. If the resource is unlimited, the organisms do not compete themselves. Okay. And next is a parasitism. Parasitism where there are so many parasites which are host specific. If for example there is a one host, I mean one parasite which is depending on a particular host. Now what the host will do, it is going to evolve. If the host is evolving along with the host, the parasite will also evolve. This is what called as a co-evolution. Okay. And next is a commensalism. You can see the examples are very important. Like orchid plants which are growing on a mango tree, where orchid plants are getting a shelter from the mango tree, but mango tree is not affected anymore, right? And I told you this example also. Shark example, right? Sucker on a shark, and barancles on a whale, and ergets and cattle. So you might have observed, right? Wherever the cattle are walking, nearly you can see the ergets, which means what? If the cattle are walking, all the insects which are present in the grass, they will come out. So these ergets can eat those insects. This is how the commensalism works between ergets and cattle. And sea anemone and clownfish also. Sea anemone will be giving a shelter to this clownfish. And mutualism, the best example is a lichen, which you can see in the image, and also the mycorrhiza, that is a fungi which is associated with the higher plant roots. Okay, here is a question. You can try to answer for it. What is the relationship between the organisms of a different species where an organism is benefited and the other is a harm? So one organism is getting benefited and the other organism is a harm. What is that? Parasitism, commensalism, mutualism, competition. Yes, I'm launching a technical poll here, sorry, MCQ poll here. You can answer in the poll. Come on, do answer in the poll. Good, very good. I'm ending the poll, and yes, what you have chosen is absolutely correct. So in the parasitism, one organism is getting, which is getting benefited here in the parasitism? Can you tell me which is getting benefited in the parasitism? Either a host or parasite. Host is a benefit or parasite is getting benefit? Can you answer? That is, host is getting a harm, whereas parasite is getting benefit. The same way, commensalism. In the commensalism, what is going to happen? One organism will get a benefit and one more will get nothing. Mutualism, both organisms will get benefit. Competition, both the organisms will get harm. Okay, this question also you take for the homework. And other than that question, what you have to do is that go through the NCERT line by line and prepare your own notes. That is very important, preparing your own notes so that you'll be having a particular idea what to write, what not to write in the exams. And practice the module questions. I hope everybody, I mean, you guys got the modules. Yes, thank you. If you have a doubt, you can ask me in the chat box. Any doubts? Okay. Then we can leave the class. Thank you. Bye-bye.